This side, Rahul Magan here is the Chief Executive Officer of Treasury Consulting LLP. And this time we would be covering a topic which is XVA Desk, which is Valuation Adjustment Desk. As you very well understand that currently we are living in a world when the regulators are trying to moving towards symmetry. And they have a logical reason behind that, because they said that in 2001 they saw Enron. In 2000 they saw dot-com bubble. In 2008 they saw financial crisis, and in between we had a lot of things that has happened. Now the reason behind not to forget about LTCM, which is a hedge fund. Now they are saying that we should have valuation adjustments in place. Now these valuation adjustments are turning out to be very, very important as far as the Basel III is concerned. Of course, in Indian context, such valuation adjustment do not hold true. The reason is quite simple. Number one, as a country, India do not have Basel III. As a country, the regulator is completely obsolete in nature. By 2018, this country will try and decide that whether they need Basel III or not, and the answer is of course no, because banks are short of money. You understand the non-performing asset problem. Non-performing asset might not allow Basel III to come at least before 2022. So whatever we are discussing now, this is beyond the context of India, and this won't possible as far as the Indian context is concerned. So here we have taken an example of a wonderful bank who wanted to be on blockchain by 2020, who want that entire data of Goldman Sachs, the bank who led the show of the banking. Not a single derivative instrument which we have across the globe which they don't have in the books. Not a single invention in the derivative we have in this world which not being done by Goldman Sachs. The iBanking division of the Goldman Sachs is wonderful. The BCN network, the broker crossing network, is wonderful. They have their own FX engine. They are not relying on Murex, and moreover, they have a wonderful platform as far as the foreign exchange is concerned. This is a wonderful example of how this bank is a wonderful example how we are managing the XVA. This is how we go. Now, we are taking an example of Goldman Sachs, and when we take an example of a Goldman Sachs, we also need to understand that such banks cannot work in a silo basis. Example, cannot work not in silo. Such bank cannot work at a point of time, because except few countries in this globe, which is Somalia and Iraq, which are practically you cannot do business, practically you cannot do banking in both the countries. Goldman Sachs is everywhere. They are in India, Singapore, Europe, London, Sweden, Denmark, Russia, you just name it, not to mention the US. Now, I have divided Goldman Sachs practically into 5 parts. Number one, Goldman Sachs Asia Pacific Desk, which covers Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, Kuala Lumpur, and such countries, Hong Kong, which are opening in a belt. Goldman Sachs European Desk, of course, since the board is very small, else I would have divided this into 4 parts. Goldman Sachs European Desk means basically Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Northern Europe, and Southern Europe. These are the 4 parts on which it divided. Example, London, Sweden, Denmark, Luxembourg, Frankfurt, and the list is endless. Then we have Goldman Sachs Australia and New Zealand, which also includes Japan also. I have not mentioned it. Goldman Sachs ANZ Desk, because we need to understand that if we are learning foreign exchange, we need to understand that it is the ANZ which is starting. The world FX market start by Australia and New Zealand, and it is wind up by Australia and New Zealand. It's wind up by US. So it's approximately the first country who starts the FX in this world is Australia and New Zealand. Then we have the OPEC desk, which covers Dubai, Qatar, Bahrain, Iran, and all such countries. And then not to mention the parent country, which is US, which is Texas, California, Philadelphia, and Washington DC, and the list is endless, right? These are the 5 desks which we assume. Now, let's take an example. Currently, we are talking on 22nd October at 5 p.m. IST, which effectively means that in Australia and New Zealand, it would practically be 10 p.m. Australia. Although, we have different times and different zones in OPEC, but you practically assume it that it's approximately 3 p.m. Dubai. Regarding Singapore and all, assume it's 2.5 hours ahead, so which is 7:30 p.m. Singapore. Regarding Europe, we have different timings, so practically it's going to be 1 p.m. London. US is something yet to start because sitting nowadays it's approximately 10 p.m. when the US starts, and it's approximately 2 a.m. when US winds up. So US is yet to start. Now Goldman Sachs is getting a lot of trades every minute. Goldman Sachs is just like Singapore airport, where after 60 seconds a flight is landing, and it takes hardly 5 minutes for the immigration department to immigrate you. So it takes, after every 45 seconds a flight is landing, and it takes approximately 5 minutes for immigration department to immigrate you. This is Singapore it is, right? Now the point is, Goldman Sachs, all these desks are taking care of different clients. Sometimes they are taking care of the different subsidiaries of a same client. Example, Apple. Apple is in Australia, Apple is in Europe, Apple is in Asia, not to mention they are in US, and Apple is in Dubai. Practically speaking, except Iraq and Somalia, where business cannot be done, Apple is everywhere in this globe. Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, they are generating revenue across everywhere in this globe. Now the moral of the story is that the local subsidiaries would be taking up a position at their local centers. For a minute, assume that they are not taking a non-deliverable trade. What are non-deliverable trade? Non-deliverable trade is a trade when you are dealing with a currency which is practically not deliverable, and due to some regulatory reason you have to move out. Example, India. If Apple India would be here and they have to hedge their AR, they have to go through fair value hedging. That fair value hedging couldn't be possible in India because of regulatory compliances. We know we are living in an obsolete structure. You need to go to Singapore to hedge that. Example, Apple India would be having one form of bad debts. Not bad debts, practically they have some AR which they has raised to the client. AR stands for account receivable. They raised to the client not paid to Apple, and now Apple want you to take a CDS position. Maybe different type of CDS. CDS stands for credit default swaps. In that sense, Apple have to go to non-deliverable format. Now, in nutshell, wherever Apple would go, Apple would hedge it here, they hedge it in European desk, Asia Pacific desk, US desk, or OPEC desk. The bank has four issues currently in the mind. Issue number one, profit margining. OTC trades are losing the profit. According to a report in the media, in the last 5 years, practically speaking from 2012 to 2017, there is a decrease in the profit of the OTC trade by approximately 12 to 13% as far as the G7 banks are concerned, group of 7 banks are concerned. And we very well understand that Goldman Sachs is a #1 bank as far as the G7 banks are concerned. So even if you have used the word G3, Goldman Sachs would be there. Another problem, which is OTC trades profit. OTC trades are losing the first was the profit margining. Profit margining is basically the collateral requirement which we are going to discuss. OTC profits, which we already discussed, it is losing. Third is a trade lifecycle management. Banks have their own view, regulators have their own view. As far as the regulator is concerned, they have saw Enron, they saw LTCM, they saw 2000 dot-com bubble, they 2003 Hong Kong issue, they saw 2008 financial crisis, and effective 2008 till 2017, which is practically 9 years. No economy except Singapore and very few can claim that they are fixed. More or less they are not fixed. They're just being resolved for a period of time. They're not being fixed. Regulator wanted to make sure that there should be valuation adjustments that should be in the books of banks via Basel III, to make sure that they are able to cap the banking system as far as the systematic crisis is concerned. And these are the valuation adjustment. CVA, credit valuation adjustment. DVA, debit valuation adjustment. FVA, funding valuation adjustment. KVA, capital valuation adjustment. Don't be confused. Capital value adjustment is always KVA. So don't take it as the CVA. One is MVA, margin valuation adjustment. One is COLVA. Sometimes it's also known as OIS, overnight index swaps. Then we have a quant desk. Now what is CVA? It's a cost of hedging a counterparty, which is this counterparty credit risk and legal entity data. I'm not sure how many people, those who are watching this video, they are good with a website called market.com, MARKIT, market.com, or how good they are as far as this Dodd-Frank is concerned, the Volckers are concerned. If you're being good or serving as a corporate treasurer, you would have known that you need to register your company on the market.com. And once you register your company on the market.com, you would be given something which is known as LEI, Legal Entity Identifier. That legal entity identifier will automatically go to the interbank market, which is here, interbank desk. So there is a common interbank desk where it goes. Basically, this is comprised of all CDS sellers. Goldman Sachs is also a CDS seller. JP Morgan Chase, Citi, HSBC, Deutsche, Standard Chartered, they all are CDS sellers. Now these legal entity identifier will go to CDS sellers and they will see that boss, this company which is ExxonMobil, who used to be wonderful when oil was 125, now it is approximately 50, it's not as bad as we are thinking. This would be the cost of CDS. This is how they calculate. Of course, we have a lot of models on which they calculate that. This is the legal entity data. The websites like www.market.com helping the banks to evaluate, basically the credit derivative players to evaluate the stuff. Then we have DVA. DVA stands for debit valuation adjustment. DVA is nothing but the mirror image of CVA. CVA is about the party. DVA is about you. Example, Goldman Sachs is taking a trade with ExxonMobil. There are both issues which Goldman Sachs is having. Issue number one, what would if Goldman Sachs default? This is DVA, debit valuation adjustment. What would if ExxonMobil default? This is CVA, credit valuation adjustment. What would if both will default? So it's not that Goldman Sachs don't keep their default into consideration. They do keep, and that is DVA. And that is what we mentioned, that this is on credit quality. Then we have KVA, capital valuation adjustment, whereby three important things has to be taken into consideration. And I'm not sure how good you are in Basel III. But if you should have known these things, and every second day there is a lot of action which is happening. Now one is the capital requirements, which including TLAC also. TLAC stands for total loss absorbing capital. And then we have liquidity coverage ratio and net stable funding ratio. There is a lot of action which is happening every day as far as these ratios are concerned. Then we have FVA, which is funding valuation adjustment. Let's take an example. Take it simple, that there is a 9% capital requirement on every trade. ExxonMobil coming to Goldman Sachs and they wanted to do a trade of $100 billion. For ExxonMobil, 100 billion is nothing, very small. Or if I would have taken a company called Aramco, nothing. Now, 9% is the capital requirement, which effectively means that $9 billion is required from a regulatory standpoint as far as the capital is concerned. So basically minimum $9 billion of the capital is required as far as the regulatory is concerned. Now the point of contention. This $9 billion the bank could either have from equity or from the debt. Now bank is not a proprietary based concern, right? Bank always takes the money outside the market. Now bank, when they take money outside the market, they need to pay something, because once they're going to pay something, that is a cost. Now that could be certificate of deposit. It could have been so many instruments which you have in the market, which you can take it. Now the cost of this $9 billion is going to be deducted from the client, or is going to be part of the client. This is funding valuation adjustment. Then we have COLVA. One is the margin value adjustment. This is very important. I hope that you are following this entity, ISDA, International Swaps and Derivative Association. Every second day there is a lot of action which is happening in the ISDA. Now there is a action which is happening, single currency CSA, credit support annex, multi-currency CSA, we have RDS, risk disclosure statement, we have annexure schedule to annex, we have ISDA Master Service Agreement 2002. So there is a lot of stuff which is happening. So this is margin valuation adjustment, and of course each things have their own permutation and combination, and everything we cannot cover in a single video. Last, OIS, overnight index swaps, or collateralized valuation adjustment. Take a simple example. You are doing an exchange traded trade, or Goldman Sachs is covering their OTC position in exchange, and that's quite normal. Assuming they are keeping a collateral of $10 billion, what do you think? Goldman Sachs is not taking a position on that $10 billion? Other way. They have a CASA ratio, CASA stands for current account saving account. They have a CASA ratio of 20%, and assuming 90%, assuming that CASA stands at $200 billion, and out of this 60% is open. So how much is the CASA? CASA ratio is 90%. It stands $200 billion. 60% is open, which stand $120 billion. Now, don't you think they will take a position in the OIS market? They are going to be, which is overnight index swaps. This is how it works, and this is how it's scheduled to work. But the problem which XVA Desk is facing nowadays, as far as these big banks are concerned, the problem is these banks are widely spread, and if they give a right to independent entities to decide the CVA, DVA, MVA, XVA, there is another RVA, and so on and so forth, this is going to be a big issue. It would be like that. The Asia Pacific desk has charged 20 bips to ExxonMobil, while Singapore desk have charged 25 bips for ExxonMobil. It's going to be a big scene in the market, because the same bank, same client covered at two different locations. One CVA is 20 bips and one CVA is 25 bips. To resolve this problem, what banks currently nowadays are doing, as Basel III is getting stringent, a lot of valuation adjustments which are coming on the board, and banks have now realized that, boss, if you wanted to do business, you have to learn these valuation adjustment, and also you have to take that into consideration. Now banks have started maintaining a consolidated or centralized XVA desk. But the problem with that XVA desk is that market is changing at a very faster pace. Take an example. If I would be creating a captive, I don't use the word captive here, I use the word XVA desk. If I would be the chairman of the Goldman Sachs, I would have created an XVA somewhere at a centralized location, which is Singapore. Because Singapore is able to capture the Tokyo market, they are able to capture the London market, able to capture the Indian market, and to an extent, they are able to capture the US market also. If I would have created that throughout the day, the markets are going to be changed at a very faster pace. So a lot of things that subject to change. There are two important problems that centralized XVA desk have to face. In fact, in my personal opinion, it's not two, more than two. Number one, how they are going to take care of the regulatory changes which is happening throughout the day. Monetary Authority of Singapore would have their own regulatory, Reserve Bank of India would have their own regulatory, Reserve Bank of Australia, Reserve Bank of New Zealand, everybody would have their own regulatory in place. Issue number two, how they are passing the information to non-deliverable market traders. It's via RM, Reuters Messenger, or Bloomberg Messenger, or their own centralized messenger. Issue number three, very important, how they are going to passing this impact in the TMS, Treasury Management Systems. Now, we are talking about Goldman Sachs, which have their own FX engine. They don't have Murex, they don't have Calypso. But there are a lot of banks who are all set to face this problem, like ANZ, who is on the Murex, Gulf Bank, who is on the Murex, and there are multiple banks who are on the Murex. Now, how they are going to do that? How TMS is going to be configured? Fourth and very important challenge is the margin valuation adjustment, because ISDA works different in different locations. Example, non-deliverable. Take an example of India. In India, for a 12-month deal, no ISDA is required. No ISDA is required. On the contrary, in Singapore, for a single non-deliverable deal, you need to have ISDA in place. And of course, there are different definitions of CSA, Schedule 2 Annex, risk disclosure statement as far as the different instruments is concerned. So centralized XVA desk is something which is quite not easy for all the banks. There are a lot of things which they have to change, and at the same time it's going to be very important for each and every bank to have to make sure that these valuation adjustments going to be symmetric in nature. It should not happen that one legal entity is charging 20 bips on ExxonMobil. On the other hand, another legal entity is charging 30 bips. It's going to create the big scene in the market. But we are moving in the world when the banks have to take care of this problem. There are a lot of written material which is available in that regards, and banks are, in my personal opinion, working very hard in that regards. This is what we wanted to present, the scene what is known as XVA Desk, Valuation Adjustment Desk. Before winding up this video, I would like to tell you that this problem do not end here. Rather, this problem have just started. In the sense like, as the time would move, and one single downturn, the count of this valuation adjustment will grow by at least twice. It would be very difficult for banks to have that in Basel III, but they're left with no option because they have to manage the business. Quants will play a very important role in the near term, and Treasury Consulting LLP is focusing heavily as far as the quant is concerned. In case, and believe me, we are opening our fixed income desk effective November 2017. Hopefully by December 2017 we would have our KPO also in place, knowledge processing outsourcing, and hopefully by January 2018 we would have our LPO also in place, which is legal processing outsourcing. And we will give you everything: CVA, DBA, XVA, RBA, MVA, FVA, everything, COLVA, OIS, will give you the live valuation. In case you have any requirement, visit our website www.treasuryconsulting.in. Mobile is 9899242978. Skype ID is Rahul5327. The email is rahul.magan@treasuryconsulting.in. We would like to thank you very much, and more videos on the way. Have a wonderful time ahead.